Crawford versus Madrimov. How do you know you're the best? Is it the 40-fight undefeated streak? Dominating 3 divisions? Or is it that you're always looking for more? Facing an undefeated champion on the #1 boxing platform in the world, Crawford versus Madrimov. August 3rd, buy now at TAZN.com.
So this weekend, Turkey Al Sheikh and the Riyadh season go on tour to LA. Top of the bill is Terence Bud Crawford against Israel Madrimov. Now, a lot of people talking about this fight are sort of insinuating this fight is a bit of an easy fight, a bit of a cash grab for Terence Crawford, because Madrimov has only had 11 fights as a pro. A lot of people see this as an easy fight for Terence, easy fight for Bud, and you can understand why. Terence is arguably the best fighter on the planet today, operating today. His win over Errol Spence was one of the most complete and perfect performances I've seen in a ring from any era. From any era, at any weight, you will not see a more complete, controlled, just a performance of absolute perfection almost against Errol Spence. Now, I was talking about this fight to Joe Stunner the other night. We was having a little conversation, as we do quite often, about this sort of stuff. And I said to Joe Stunner, I see this as possibly being a 50-50. And now, if I had to put money on this fight, if I had to put money on a winner, I don't usually bet on boxing in monetary terms anyway, but if I put money on this fight, if I had to put a large amount on, I would put it on Terence Crawford. Terence Crawford is, as I said before, arguably the best fighter fighting today. He's proven 40 plus fights, 36, 37 years of age, but in terms of fight miles, in terms of fight years, still quite young. Hasn't had a taxing career, shall we say, in the way a lot of fighters do. He's just been that much better at most of his career than everybody else he's fought. But Israel Madrimov brings a certain amount of difference and jeopardy to this fight if you look at him from a technical point of view. First off, if you look at his footwork is very unorthodox. He's a very unorthodox fighter, but his footwork is something that's really quite special. If you go on YouTube and watch his footwork drills, you'll see what I mean. He does display it in his fights. His last fight, which is on another Riyadh season card, where he became WBA champion, I believe. He looked absolutely fantastic, and he used his footwork to great effect in that fight. He does things very unorthodoxly, but his footwork is fantastic. It's very quick, and I don't think anyone Terence Crawford has faced so far has had that kind of attribute. He's also very unorthodox in the way he puts his attacks together. Now, sometimes they do lead to him getting caught. He does leave his head and his chin exposed, but sometimes it does work very effectively for him, as it did in that fight. He does things very differently. When people talk about the lack of fights he's had, sort of 11, and use that as an excuse as to say why this will be an easy night for Bud. If we look at the likes of Lomachenko and how fewer fights he had before he started to win titles and dominate, it was the same kind of fight. A very small amount of professional bouts, very extensive amateur career, as is Madrimov. He's also, again, in comparative terms, when you look at him facially, he does have the looks of Gennady Golovkin. They look very similar, but now stylistically, I'd put him more in the bracket of Lomachenko than I would Golovkin. Golovkin being kind of a plodder, a walk-forward plodder, very effective walk-forward plodder, absolutely destructive puncher, whereas Lomachenko, again, used very sort of unorthodox footwork, genius footwork, if you like, and genius upper body movement. Madrimov uses his footwork to great success. If you watch him, he'll do some patterns with his feet where he'll sort of move sideways, then move in, and then after he's punched, he will move after he's punched, which is A lot of fighters neglect to move after they've thrown punches. And of course, this will aid them in evading punches coming back or counter punches, or it will reposition them again to throw another attack after the first initial attack. Madrimov is also he looks very good at the weight, very big at the weight, very strong. He's got fantastically strong legs. Again, if you go and watch YouTube and look at some of the leg work he does with static jumps, squat jumps and stuff like that, he's an absolute phenomenal athlete. I was listening to an interview with his trainer this morning saying that he's ready to go 15 rounds and he can do 15 rounds at pace. Saying that, Madrimov likes to start fast, and certainly every time he's gone past 6 rounds, his output has dropped. When you look at Crawford, he's kind of the opposite. Crawford will kind of start slower and his output will tend to build over the rounds. Sean Porter, the successes that Sean Porter had in that fight were down to, a lot of times, Sean Porter would present sort of unorthodox angles and unorthodox attacks. And even though a lot of those didn't have a massive effect on Terence, it did stop Terence throwing punches in those sort of instances. So even though those unorthodox offensive attacks by Porter weren't having a great effect a lot of the time, they did halt Bud's output in throwing punches back because of sort of the unorthodox style in which Porter launched those attacks. So Madrimov has youth on his side. He possibly has size on his side. Punch power is debatable. Is Terence Crawford's power going to transfer up? Now, there's also inactivity. Madrimov won his title, I think, in March. I believe that was his last fight. Bud now hasn't fought for essentially a year. He's now moving up in weight. And going back to the Errol Spence fight. Now, as I said before, and I made a video about this at the time, that was one of the most complete performances I've seen by any fighter in any era, especially when you look at the caliber opponent it was against. But now, moving up in weight will sometimes aid a fighter. When we saw, I can't remember the name, just lost to Ryan Garcia, but beat Regis Prograis in the fight before. I said before that fight that, you'll tell me the name, terrible names. But when he moved up in weight to fight Regis Prograis, it done him the world of good. Now, Terence Crawford was so good against Errol Spence. I find it hard to believe he can move up in weight and that will aid him and make him even better. If it does, you're going to see a performance. If he can top the performance he put on against Errol Spence, then that will be just the work of witchcraft. I'm not sure he can get any better than that. Essentially, am I saying that Terence Bud Crawford has peaked, and can he reach that peak again after a year of inactivity, moving up in weight, and all those things considered? He's now in with a natural at this weight in Madrimov. He's young, he's hungry. I also believe Madrimov's got faster hands. I think he's got faster hands than Crawford. Better hand speed, faster hand speed. But as we know, the thing that combats hand speed is what? It's timing. And when it comes to timing, Terence Bud Crawford has probably got the finest timing in the game. He's got a lot of the best skills in the game in any department, but timing is really Terence Crawford's thing. He almost seems to throw a shot and almost telepathically read what his opponent is going to do before his opponent's even done it, and land those shots, and the timing is sublime. So timing does beat speed if the timing will still be there after a year of inactivity and after a move up in weight. So when I said to Joe Stunner that I believe this is a 50-50, I believe there's elements of Madrimov and elements of Crawford which make this sort of in the balance for me almost a 50-50. If I had to put money on a winner, I'd put it on Terence Crawford, of course. Boxing logic is always going to lead you to do that. But I do think there are elements in this, the move up in weight for Terence Crawford, the inactivity for Terence Crawford, the unorthodox problems that Madrimov will pose, the superior hand speed, possibly the superior power, some crazy footwork by Madrimov, and just the aura of all-round confidence of Madrimov that you see him smiling in the build-ups and interviews, and he has that air of just supreme confidence, like almost like he knows something that everybody else doesn't. Will that be enough to beat Terence? I don't know. And again, like I said, I reiterate, I put my money on Terence Crawford. But, you know, Terence Crawford is a genuine bad man. He's a hard man. He's had a hard upbringing. Terence Crawford is also a switch here. He's ambidextrous as a fighter. I think this came from early in his career when he had an injury, and just so that he could continue to train, he learned to box in the other stance. Madrimov can do this also. So the problems that Crawford can pose to another fighter by boxing out of either stance, Madrimov can do the same thing. And if Crawford does switch his stance and use a different look and box from either the southpaw or the orthodox stance, Madrimov will be able to combat that because he has the ability to do that also. So when Terence does that and can confuse other opponents, it might not be as effective against Madrimov because Madrimov also has the ability to box from either stance. So, like I said, there are some elements in this that I think throw this into the balance. And if an opponent like Madrimov has certain abilities which will cause Terence Crawford problems or cause Terence Crawford to think differently and give him questions to answer, then surely it must give him at least a 50% chance of winning a fight. Whether he'll do so, who knows? And like I said, I'm not saying Madrimov wins. I'm saying he possibly has a 50% chance of winning this fight because no one is unbeatable. And we don't know when Terence Crawford's level is going to dip with just age, just a natural degradation of age. And it always affects fighters at the lower weights more than it affects fighters in the higher weights. So very interesting fighting prospect. I think it'll be fantastic. I think the fights that Madrimov are going to be are always going to be interesting just because of his style, just because of his physicality, his hand speed and stuff like that. So although I make Terence a betting favourite, if I had to put my money on, I put it on Terence Crawford. He's probably pound for pound best fighter in the world today. How could you ever bet against him? But do I see this fight in the balance, and do I think Madrimov has at least a 50% chance of winning? Yeah, I believe he does. But saying that, my money would be on Crawford. But don't write Madrimov off. Don't think this is a given. Don't think this is an easy fight because it isn't. That's it. I'll see you all soon. I'm out.